Chapter 5 Judiciary. We will now discuss what are the duties, the functions of the judicial department. But before going into the details, if you remember, Indian Constitution has divided the duties of making the laws, executing the laws, and checking whether the laws are implemented properly or not, and doing justice to the people to settle the disputes was given to three different departments based on US based model, that is legislative, executive and judiciary. This was a replica of US model of administration. The US has adopted this division of legislative, executive and judiciary based on Montesquieu's book of the Spirit of Laws. So according to this book written by Montesquieu, the US government has decided to divide the responsibilities of administration, like to make the laws was been handed over to the legislature, that is the legislative bodies, to execute the laws which are made by the legislature to the executives, that is the president, the in charge persons like governor, ministers, senators, everyone. And moving on to understand, to settle any kind of disputes between the people and also between the legislature, between the executive and the judiciary, checking it without turning it into an arbitrary system. Because in legislature, for example in India, we have the Prime Minister being a member of the legislative and leader of the House of Lok Sabha, and he is the executive here. So when he is the member of the House and he is the head of the Sabha and he is an executive, there is a possibility to behave arbitrarily and making the laws according to his interest or according to his concerns, which may not be in the favor of the people. So in order to check and arrest these kind of situations, judiciary has been given enormous powers. The Judicial Department of India works on various other topics, like Indian judiciary. The Supreme Court can pass laws stating that a teacher cannot beat a student, a government cannot put a certain tax, it can also put certain new restrictions, like government cannot interfere in certain actions of the people, certain religious customs of the people. It can also sometimes strike off the acts which are passed by the government if they are violating the basic rights of the citizens. Like this, the Indian judiciary has the enormous responsibility and acts as the custodian of the fundamental rights of its citizens. What is the role of Indian judiciary? So when it comes to the role of the Indian judiciary, as we discussed till now, it has enormous responsibility. It settles the disputes between the people, between the states, between any two parties. Sometimes it interprets the laws. Sometimes it gives judgments which are very serious issues or concerns in the society. Moving on to understand the details of what are the basic responsibilities of the judiciary. The Indian judiciary plays an important role in first settling the disputes, that is the dispute resolutions. The disputes can be between an individual with another individual, between a group of individuals versus another single individual. It can be an individual versus a state government. It can be a section of people against the government. It can be two states, one state government versus the other state government, like Telangana versus Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka versus Tamil Nadu. It can also be 2-3 states together versus the other state, like for example Maharashtra versus Andhra, Telangana and Karnataka states together. Sometimes states versus the union government. Some states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh together against the union government, or the Delhi government against the union government, or an individual against the High Court or against the Supreme Court, against the union government. So it can be a dispute between one individual versus the other individual, one individual with the other group of individuals, a group of individuals versus the other group of individuals, an individual versus the state government, an individual versus couple of state governments versus group of individuals, an individual versus the union government, an individual versus the authority of the government. Like this, the disputes can be from any corner to any corner to any level. There can be a dispute. So it is the utmost responsibility of the Supreme Court to settle the disputes, to bring resolutions in these disputes. This is the first main duty entrusted to the Supreme Court of our country. The second, the judicial review. This is another significant authority given to our Supreme Court. Supreme Court acts and checks the authority of the legislature as well as the executive. If the legislature is formulating any laws which are going to stand against the interest of the public, or at some sense violating the basic rights of the people, then that law can be struck off by the Supreme Court. If a government passes any law like cannot choose any profession of your choice, you have to choose a profession in the lineage of what your father has done or what your great grandfather has done, but not any other new profession, which means that the right to equality opportunities has been violated for that individual. So when the violation is happening, this can be reported to the Supreme Court or the State High Court, which government has passed this law, because it's clearly violating the fundamental right of the citizens. So these kind of laws can be struck off by the Supreme Court or the State High Courts. This authority to strike off the laws which are passed by the state governments or the union governments is known as judicial review. So this is another significant power and duty given to our Supreme Court. And the third one, uphold the laws and enforce the fundamental rights. As I told you just now, it not only strikes off the laws which are against the fundamental rights. If there are any violation of the fundamental rights happening, the Supreme Court takes the responsibility and ensures that the justice happens there. How is it possible? Like, for example, Hakim Sheikh, who is an agricultural laborer, by mistake he fell down from a running train and he got hurt, but he was taken to number of hospitals. The hospitals have rejected to give him health aid. So with this he was in trouble. So finally, when he reported this to the government, many of the officials of the government did not respond properly. Then the issue was taken to the notice of the High Court of West Bengal. Pashchim Bengal workers versus West Bengal in 1996. When the issue was discussed and debated, the High Court gave a strict judgment saying that the compensation, the loss which was incurred to the Hakim Sheikh has to be paid back, and the government also should come up with a blueprint to help the individuals who are in needy, who require the medical help at times of accidents, at times of emergencies. It also told that denying the medical aid to them at times of emergency is denying the right to livelihood for them, denying the right to equality. Equal treatment has not been meted to them. Right to life has been violated to them. The Article 121 of the Constitution, which contains the fundamental rights, has been seriously violated. So, the West Bengal government has to pay compensation and should also enforce a mechanism to ensure that anyone who is in need, who is requiring the medical aid, should be provided without any hindrances. Like this, the Supreme Court or the Indian judicial system has the main responsibilities like dispute resolution, judicial review, upholding the law and enforcing the fundamental rights, which we have seen in example of Hakim Sheikh, where an agricultural laborer got hurt when he fell down from a running train, and later the consequences, he could not get medical aid when it is required for him in time. So later the case went on to the High Court. The court gave a judgment in the favor of Hakim Sheikh, upholding the Article 21 of the fundamental rights. These are the basic duties and the responsibilities of the Indian judicial system.